What's going on, pipe people? The Pipe Hunter, back at you. This video will be part 3 of the bold flavors experiment, started by Rav and Revelation. If you haven't seen the other 2 videos I put out on that, I recommend you go to my playlist section and check out the first 2 videos before watching this one. Before I get into the experiment, a little housekeeping. First, I'm smoking a Savinelli 624. This one's called a La Pipa from 2006, but it looks like a Tundra to me. I believe it's a 624. In it, I have Eric Stokovy's 4th generation 4 Seasons Summer Mixture, the New English blend. I smoked all of the Rango Balkan Supreme for the experiment, so I didn't have any left to smoke on camera. And this is the closest thing I have, and it's a good blend. Next thing I want to show, I'm a little behind on this one, to be honest, about a week or 2. Check out this amazing tamper made by Sow Dog Piper. Check that out. You can't see it, but this is a railroad spike that he had found or acquired, and he turned it into this amazing tamper. Now, my brother is a professional when it comes to identifying different woods. That's Delta Kilo. I am not. He could probably tell you exactly what this wood is just by looking at it. And I can't do that. I wish I could, but it's beautiful though. Love the handle at the top. Amazing woodwork. It was very clean when I got it. I think it's at 34 at the bottom. It does. It's gonna be difficult to see because I've used it so much. I don't think I can get that to... that's okay. But Sow Dog, thank you so much for this. That is such a thoughtful gift. And I've been using it a lot. It's a fantastic tamper, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, good sir. So let me see. Now, for the experiment, the bold flavors experiment. This video is dealing with the sous vide method, the oven method, and the pressure cooker, all at 2 hours. And I knew that the Rango Balkan Supreme, after 2 hours in either of the 3 methods, would be different than the original. I didn't think the 3 would be as different from each other as they were. I was very surprised when I got to sampling all 3. Even though the heat was about the same, the time frame was 2 hours, each method produced its own results. So the first one is the sous vide method, which I double checked with my wife this time, and she says that's how it's pronounced. So I'm gonna believe her. The first thing was the aroma of the blend. It's the same blend, so it's the same aroma. It was a little lighter, and a little bit sweeter. And from the aroma, this Latakia didn't seem to be as prevalent. It's still a very much Latakia forward blend, but it toned down the aroma of the Latakia. And in smoking, the Latakia was slightly toned down. Again, this is the sous vide method. Still Latakia forward, but slightly toned down. All the flavors of the Rango Balkan Supreme had mellowed a little bit, which is what happens naturally in the aging process. With an English blend, a lot of people like their Latakia on the more potent side, we'll say. Not so aged, not so mellowed. I found it really enjoyable myself. And with all the blends, the flavors, you can still pick out the Latakia from the Oriental and the Virginia. But there's a little bit of crossover with the flavors. You know, the Latakia will pick up some of the notes of the Oriental. The Oriental will pick up some of the notes of the Virginia. The boundaries of the flavors become a little less pronounced. You can still identify each individual flavor, but there's a little crossover with it. And that part held true for all three methods. Now this blend, or this method, the Sous-Vide method specifically, what's very unique about it is the way, to me, the Cavendish was affected. It kind of toasted the Cavendish, it tasted like. It brought the Cavendish more forward, the Latakia a little bit back. The Cavendish had this toasted flavor to it. It became a little bit more pronounced, a little bit sweeter. And even with this method, the Cavendish is never in the lead. But it is more prominent. So out of the three methods, this one, the Cavendish was affected the most, and this was probably the sweetest outcome out of the three methods. Now the next method is the oven method, and I am reading off notes here because there's so much to remember. It's like reviewing where I'm reviewing three kind of separate English blends at once. So the oven method, out of the three, I thought was the least affected, the least amount of noticeable change. The one thing I did notice immediately was the texture of the tobacco seemed to be a little bit more toasted. I know I just used that word for the Cavendish, but feeling it, the tobacco, it felt like it had been slightly toasted. But smoking it, the changes to the flavor were fairly minimal. Again, all the flavors had kind of melted a little bit, so it was, again, the Latakia picks up some flavors of the Oriental, and the Oriental picks up some of the flavors from the Latakia, but to less effect with this method. It mellowed a little bit, but not as much as the Sous-Vide method. It became a little sweeter, but not as much as the Sous-Vide method. The Latakia with the oven method is still up front. It didn't really pull it into the background any. And it was still on the potent side. Not as mellowed, definitely still had the woody note. And I forgot to mention this with the Sous-Vide method. You'll have to excuse me. Out of the three, the Sous-Vide method, I felt smoked the smoothest and coolest. They all smoked a little smoother than the original. A little creamier maybe. But the Sous-Vide method was definitely the coolest smoking and the smoothest. The oven method was smoother than the original Orengo Balkan Supreme, but not quite as smooth as the Sous-Vide method. It was already pretty smooth and cool smoking as is, but this little experiment has definitely smoothed out some rough edges. Now the last method, the pressure cooker method. This one was my personal favorite. The Latakia went through, I felt like, more change with this method than the other two. It brought out some more smoky barbecue notes. Kind of like what you would get with Kentucky Fried Cured, but not exactly at the same time. The Orientals had a big change with this method as well. The floral aspect was deepened, enhanced. Didn't really become spicier, but a more noticeable spice flavor from it. And the flavors, again, as I've mentioned, all three methods did. All the flavors melded together a little bit. But they didn't really mellow so much with this. The flavors actually kind of deepened and became a little stronger, I think. I was surprised how different this method was than the other two, at least to my palate. It definitely smokes cooler, with less rough edges than the original unstoved version, but not as much as the sous vide method. So between the oven and the pressure cooker, those two seem to smoke about as smooth and about as cool as each other. So as I mentioned, I was very surprised by the difference in all three. So this has been a great learning experience for me. I'm curious to see how the same methods at 4 hours, how that changes the tobacco from its original state. And if, 4 hours will be a lot different than 2 hours or about the same. 4 hours could be too long, and I might prefer just 2 hours instead of the 4. But I'm doing my best to really take my time with this. I figure because Raven Revelation spent so much time putting this together, I could really take my time in smoking these to get a good comparison of each one. I hope to have part 4 out by the end of next week. And then the week after, part 5. Part 4 being these 3 methods at 4 hours, and part 5 being the plug method. I've written several reviews on some new tobaccos. I plan to have at least one out before I post part 4 of this series next week. That'll be Low Country's Peaty. I also have a Captain Earl's blend that I'm ready to review. I'd say the summer mixture, 4th generation, I'd about have it ready to review, but I'm not sure if that'll be this week. But the Peaty will definitely be this week. And actually, Delta Kilo and I talked a good bit about Peaty and a few other blends on this past weekend's episode of For the Love of the Leaf podcast, which you can find on Spotify. And if you're a fan of pipes and/or cigars, I recommend you do that. I'm a little biased being one of the co-hosts, but I think it's a great podcast, great tobacco conversation, great information too. That's all I have for this video. Thank you guys for stopping by. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, keep smoking, keep puffing, keep enjoying.